summarize to you this debate by discussing to you the issues that transpired in this debate. We have two issues in this debate. First is that whether or not there was compliance with the rules of court and that of RA 6981 or the admission to the Witness Protection Program. And particularly in the requirements that A, no other direct evidence except the testimony of the accused is present, and B, he does not appear to be the most guilty. Second issue is that would justice be served faster if Mr. Sally Apatuan would be considered as a state witness. And under this, I will discuss the issue is it possible that he is just escaping conviction and that's why he wants to be a state witness. Now let me go on and discuss the first issue. Whether or not there was compliance with the rules of court and that of RA 6981. Ms. Casitlo went up here telling us that, you know what, in the rules of court, particularly Rule 119, Section 17, there are requirements that ought to be followed. And in what we have right now in the news, these requirements are not being followed. And we say from this side of the House that the Supreme Court held in U.S. v. Avanzado that the only object of this Rule 119, Section 17 is to prevent unnecessary or arbitrary exclusion from the complaint of persons guilty of the crime charged. It means, ladies and gentlemen, members of this House, that Rule 19, Section 17 is not to be followed absolutely, Mr. Speaker, members of this House. It only sets mere conditions which should control the court in the exercise of its discretion in discharging the accused person. If in case that these requirements are not met, the court must look elsewhere to find the rules touching on the competency, admissibility, relevancy, and probative value of the testimony. This is where the affirmative side is coming from, that there are other matters to be looked into other than the rules of court. But nonetheless, even if assuming without conceding that U.S. v. Avanzado is not a credible source, with all due respect to the Supreme Court, we still say that the requirements, particularly with respect to that there are no other direct evidence except the testimony of the accused. Let me discuss first to you what is being since 2009, what the prosecution has presented are only oral evidence, and we all know that the best evidence here is object evidence. We have a line of witnesses claiming that the Apatuans are the masterminds of this massacre. We are not saying that these witnesses are actually not credible. We say from this side of the House that that direct evidence, which should be object evidence, should be presented more and be given more probative value. And with that, we say that the testimony of the accused is very much important. The very fact that he is an Apatuan, he is a member of the Apatuan, and he knows better because these people are his family members who think and probably act the same as him, and probably because they had meetings in their house in Maguindanao. Second of all, he said that he does not appear to be the most guilty. The negative side comes here that, you know what, he is the most guilty. Why? Because he's a conspirator. And what evidence did they provide? It was the testimony of Saliao, the housemate of the Apatuans, who claimed that there were two incidents wherein the Apatuans had a meeting inside the Apatuan mansion. But let me just remind you, ladies and gentlemen, members of this House, that mere presence would not make you a conspirator. Do we actually really know what transpired in that meeting? They could have been only talking about family matters and not exactly the massacre that occurred, or it was not actually a planning meeting of the massacre in Maguindanao. So with that, we say that since the only witness they presented was the housemaid of the Apatuans, which we really do not know what transpired during those gatherings, because it is also questionable on the ground that these are family members, and family members usually meet on a casual basis to talk about things, not particularly for the plotting of the killing of 58 innocent individuals. Now and also they said that there is a probability that Saldi is actually was part of this massacre, basically because it is contradicting. He had an alibi that he was in Malacanang at the time of the massacre. But then again, we have a Saliao maid here saying that he's a conspirator during the plan of the meeting. But we say again in the Supreme Court case in People versus Cañete, the judge cannot be expected or required to inform himself with absolute certainty at the very outset of the trial as to everything which may be developed in the course of the trial in regard to the guilty participation of the accused in the commission of the crime.